let's get a little bit of behind the scenes with production hell from The Drinker talking about The Wizard of Oz. It's The Drinker. It's behind the scenes of The Wizard of Oz. I think this is going to be good. So let's go. God damn it, I did it again. How do I keep doing that? Let's do it.
When it comes to movies, they really don't make them like they used to, and normally I'd consider that a bad thing, but occasionally you hear stories so wild, so ridiculous and downright shocking from the so-called golden age of Hollywood that it makes you realise, yeah, maybe that's not such a bad thing after all. Such is the case with The Wizard of Oz, one of the most famous and iconic musicals of all time, a groundbreaking technical achievement that pushed the very boundaries of cinema, and according to the Library of Congress, the most watched movie in all of human history. But beneath the jaunty costumes and the Technicolor dance routines, there lies a sordid story of exploited actors, deadly accidents, abusive directors, literally toxic work environments, and fucking randy midgets.
There is a part in this what I think he's going to talk about that has actually made it that there was like there was a discussion in a modern TV show. I'll wait till it gets there, but yeah.
Making of The Wizard of Oz might be one of the wildest and most punishing productions in Hollywood history, and therefore, it makes a perfect episode of Production Hell. Our story begins way back in 1900 with the publication of the children's book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. It was a huge hit at the time, and with the rise of cinema, it wasn't long before people began experimenting with film adaptations. And holy shit, did they milk this one. Long before Judy Garland ever put on the ruby slippers, there had already been 7 different productions of The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, shit! I didn't know that! I always under the assumption that the Judy Garland film was the first Wizard of Oz film production. Huh! How about that?
And we think we've got it bad with remakes. Anyway, the success of Snow White in 1937 convinced MGM that there was still lots of money to be made by adapting children's books, and so they decided to have another bash at The Wizard of Oz. This one would prove to be their biggest production yet, with big musical numbers and the use of Technicolor for the first time in a major motion picture.
Yes, that was a big point of note, is that The Wizard of Oz was the first full-color movie, and they really played it up by starting the film off in black and white, and then when she and giving Oz that even more magical quality by when she stepped through the door, and everything is suddenly brilliant Technicolor. Like, that was honestly fucking genius in terms of filmmaking. The transition for it was absolutely genius as a way to introduce Technicolor to the big screen. You're starting off with a black and white movie, like was the norm back then, and everybody's like, okay, it's a black and white movie, and then she opens the door after the house drops into Oz, and you're getting this brilliant bright color for the first time in film history. Whomever came up with that idea, that transition, was a fucking genius.
It would give the film an iconic look for sure, but it would also create a lot of problems that we'll get into shortly. Anyway, after going through 11 different writers, the script was finally ready and casting began. The studio wanted
Actually, sorry, not black and white.
Writers, the script was finally
not black and white, sepia. Sorry, not sepia, not black and white.
Ready and casting began. The studio wanted Shirley Temple for Dorothy since she was the biggest child actor of the time and she was much closer in age to the actual character, but she was
so Moose, how it worked is when they filmed the opening scenes using the regular cameras that were using like sepia tone, at the time, or maybe black and white, and they added the sepia tone in post-production, perhaps. I'm not sure. But the way they did it is at that point of transition, they had the they had the interior set of the house painted in like black and white. And I think Dorothy herself was, her clothing was the black and white, and she probably had makeup also to facilitate that, to facilitate the illusion. And that when she opens the door, if memory serves, it's been a while since I've seen The Wizard of Oz. Thank you, Dragon, for the tier 3. Thank you so much. When Dorothy opens the door to Oz, I'm pretty sure it's been a while since I've seen it. But I believe when she opens the door, she doesn't have the black and white makeup and her clothing is in color, but she's kept in shadow. So you can't tell that they're now filming in color because she's kept in shadow. So it looks like she's still black and white. But they painted the set, the interior of the house to be that black and white. And then when they opened it, but they were filming in color at that point of transition. So when they open the door, they're still just filming, and then when Dorothy steps out, she's full color like she was before, but you just didn't know because she was hidden in shadow.
The biggest child actor of the time, and she was much closer in age to the actual character, but she was already contracted to 20th Century Fox, so they eventually settled on 16-year-old Judy Garland instead. Ray Bolger was originally cast as the Tin Man, but decided that he wanted to be the Scarecrow instead, and eventually convinced executives to let him swap places with Buddy Ebsen, who was playing Scarecrow at the time. Gail Sondergaard was originally cast as the Wicked Witch, but when they changed the character from glamorous and beautiful to the ugly green thing we see in the finished product, she was like, nah, fuck this, and pulled out. Margaret Hamilton was brought in to replace her and had just 2 days to learn all her lines and prepare for the role before filming started. I mean, damn,
shit.
man, imagine knowing you'd been specifically cast because they needed someone ugly enough to play a witch. Oh well, worse things.
I mean, props to her for learning her lines and being able to execute that performance in 2 fucking days. That is an impressive testament to her talent to be able to do that. Holy shit!
Were in store for Margaret. Believe that. Anyway, the film also called for over 100 dwarf actors to be cast as Munchkins for the Oz sequences, which was a big deal at the time because actors of that stature weren't exactly getting bombarded with work. They were also getting paid the equivalent of $3,000 per week in modern money, which meant they had plenty of cash to burn. Keep that one in mind because it'll be important later. Anyway, with the cast and crew finally assembled and the massive production ready to go into action, shooting got underway in October 1938 with Richard Thorpe in the director's chair. Thorpe had a reputation as a fast and efficient director, able to get big productions in the can without wasting time, which was exactly what MGM needed for their biggest and most expensive gamble to date. Unfortunately, Thorpe's creative vision was, well, not quite what the studio had in mind. Judy Garland was dressed up in a blonde wig and heavy makeup in order to give the kind of big, exaggerated performance you'd expect from a stage production. Needless to say, it wasn't working out, and after reviewing the first couple of weeks of footage, the studio were so disappointed that they fired Thorpe on the spot. All his scenes would end up having to be reshot, and apart from a few production stills, absolutely nothing remains of this lost version of The Wizard of Oz.
Honestly, I'd be kind of curious to see what the footage that they shot. Think about it. It's like the movie, especially its musical numbers, were already kind of grand and even to a degree bombastic. Can you imagine if it was even bigger and even more theatrical? I'd really love to see that. Oh, I don't think it still exists. I'm thinking they burned it. It's honestly, that's my feeling, my guess is it probably got burned. And hello, Viman. Welcome in. Welcome.
And director Victor Fleming was soon brought in to replace him and immediately set about fixing Dorothy's character. The blonde wig and the baby doll makeup were ditched and Garland was told to act more like herself, a decision that almost certainly saved the movie. Unfortunately, that was the least of Fleming's problems. Remember Ray Bolger, who wanted to swap parts with Buddy Ebsen so he could play the Scarecrow? Well, that didn't work out too well for old Buddy, who inhaled so much of the aluminium dust from the Tin Man paint he'd been covered in that he went into toxic shock and had to be rushed to hospital, where he spent the next 2 weeks on emergency oxygen trying not to die. By this
And this is where I was talking about, because they in an episode of House, it opens with House actually like using him as a case study for like the crowd of like new recruits after his old team had quit or was fired, and he had to hire on 3 more. One of them was use Buddy Epstein's case to basically say like how did this happen? Like why did he have these symptoms? Why did he react in this way? It was like a 2-second thing. But it's just kind of cool that they actually put Buddy Ebsen's case in House.
Point his skin had turned blue and he could barely even stand up, but the studio weren't having any of that shit. They told me to get the hell back to work, he explained in an interview later in life. Clearly he wasn't coming back though, and so he was quietly replaced by Jack Healy, who was never told what had happened to his predecessor. Instead, the production altered the Tin Man makeup to try to avoid almost killing a second actor, but the new mixture caused a severe eye infection that also needed medical treatment. Damn, it's like the Tin Man character was fucking cursed or something. It wasn't exactly a picnic for the rest of the cast either. To make up for lost time, most of them were working 6 days a week, starting at 4 AM for makeup and costume fittings, and working right through until 7 o'clock or later. The Technicolor process was also causing problems because the film needed extremely bright light to work properly, resulting in temperatures that soared to over 100 degrees Fahrenheit most days.
Oh my god! Can you imagine working damn near oh my god. Can you imagine working 15, 16-hour days in 100-degree weather, especially for these guys in the costumes? Like Judy Garland probably had it best because she was just wearing a dress. She had the makeup, which was probably heavy on her face, but she just had the gingham dress on and that. But these guys were in these full fucking costumes in 100-degree shooting temperatures. Fucking hell.
This was especially bad news for Burt Lahr, who was playing the Cowardly Lion. His costume weighed over 90 pounds and it was made from real lion fur, and it took
people on the set.
Yeah, true story, true fucking story.
So long to put on that he wasn't allowed to remove it even during lunch breaks. The makeup forced him to live on a liquid diet of milkshakes and soup, which eventually made him so sick that he could barely get through his scenes. Combine that with an extremely sweaty man trapped inside it for 12 hours at a time, and well, I think you can imagine where this one was going. Apparently the smell was so bad that cast and crew avoided him like the plague between takes.
Oh no!
Margaret Hamilton wasn't having much fun playing the Wicked Witch either. One scene where she's supposed to vanish into thin air was done with a combination of trapdoor, smoke, and pyrotechnic effects. Unfortunately, the timing got fucked up, the pyros went off too early, and the trapdoor didn't work. The result? Well, she became the Human Torch for a few seconds and had to be rushed to hospital with 3rd-degree burns over most of her face and hands.
Yeah, that's another horror story that I've heard. Like you can kind of see it in when they did this. You can kind of see her get engulfed. Look, that's her right there. I think that's a piece of her costume. You can actually kind of see her shadow in the flames before she drops. Like, look, there's her hat. There she is, right there. And then it drops. Like, and from one frame to the next, there she is, and then it dropped. Like, holy fuck.
Hospital with third-degree burns over most of her face and hands. It turns out that
Worm, I'm pretty sure that the hanging thing has been debunked. That's been I'm reasonably sure that has been widely debunked as being just like some other piece of like set dressing or something that got caught in the frame and that it wasn't actually an individual that you were seeing. So that I've heard the urban legend and I'm pretty sure it's been widely debunked at this point.
that green makeup was also highly flammable, which only added to the problem. The studio even had the balls to call her at the hospital the next day and ask her if she was coming back to work.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
When she eventually did return after a 6-week recovery period, she was immediately asked to film another scene with similar effects, and funnily enough, she was like, nah, fuck that, boys. Instead, a female stunt double had to be used, and strangely enough, the same exact thing happened again, and this time the stunt double had to be rushed to hospital.
Are you fucking kidding me right now? Oh my fucking god, are you...
Oh shit. Here we go again.
Yeah, fucking fire your pyrotechnic people! Ow! Jesus, fuck!
Really?
Then there were the environmental hazards that might not have hurt anyone at the time, but just kind of make you go, ooh. Like in one scene where Dorothy and the lion fall asleep in a field and get woken up by fallen snow, which looks lovely and peaceful on screen. The only problem is that the snow was made from fucking asbestos.
It's a bold strategy.
I do... Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Yeah, and that is the thing, is back when this was made, they had no... Yeah, this was before people knew about the dangers that came with asbestos. I'm pretty sure asbestos was linked to mesothelioma, what, by like the 1940s or 50s? So, it's... They didn't know. They had no idea at this point.
Cotton, let's see if it pays off for them.
Even the Munchkins were kicking off. See, all that money was giving them ideas above their station, and before you could say, grow up, they were drinking, gambling, and having wild orgies at the hotel they were being put up in. As Judy Garland said in a later interview, they were little drunks. They got smashed every night and they picked them up with butterfly nets. It wasn't all fun and games though, as a lot of them tried to make a pass at Garland herself. Her husband Sid Luft wrote in his biography years later, they'd make Judy's life miserable on set by putting their hands under her dress. The men were 40 or more years old. They thought they could get away with anything because they were so small.
Remember, Judy Garland was 16 years old when she made this movie. These were 40-year-old men trying to shove their hands up the dress of a 16-year-old. Fuck. No, Pop Shot, that would be fucking criminal, is what that is. Although back then, unfortunately, they didn't have laws protecting children like they did at later time. Children were not anywhere near as protected back in the 1920s and the 1930s. Unfortunately, and Judy Garland suffered because of it.
Speaking of Judy Garland, the production process was just as much of a nightmare for her as anyone else. She was already doped up on a potent combination of stimulants to get her through the long working days, a common practice with child stars at the time, which her mum apparently encouraged. Fucking mother of the year right there, guys. The studio also did everything they could think of to make her look smaller and younger, including binding her breasts and giving her diet pills to slim her down. Even that wasn't good enough, and she was often referred to as the little fat pig with pigtails by studio executives. As you can probably imagine, feeding a teenage girl a regular diet of powerful narcotics and prescription drugs, combined with sexual harassment, punishing work hours, and constant jokes about her weight wasn't doing her mental state any favours, and at one point she burst into hysterical laughter during a scene with the lion. The director Victor Fleming wasn't having any of that shit though, and slapped her across the face to snap her out of it.
Fuck.
She was apparently
Is it any wonder that as Judy Garland got older, she became, like, mentally unhinged? Like, in her adult years, into her twilight years, she was pretty much widely thought of as not being right in the head. Oh, I vaguely remember seeing, like, an interview video where I know she didn't have, well, by the twilight years, I mean the years leading up to her passing. I'm not referring to she grew to a ripe old age. When I say twilight years, I'm talking about the ones leading up to when she passed, which was unfortunately far too soon. But she was widely thought of as kind of like a fucking crackpot. I remember seeing a video of an interview. I forget what talk show she was on, but she was going on and on and on about receiving radio broadcasts through the fillings of her teeth. And, like, listening to her talk, you would think, like, this woman is off her fucking... Was it on Letterman? Okay, I couldn't remember which talk show she was on for it. It could have been Letterman. But she, like, listening to her talk, you think, this woman is out of her fucking mind. Because of the way in which she was talking. And at this point, given what we're hearing here... Like, I understand the radio broadcast thing, picking it up through the fillings can be real, but I'm talking about, like, the way she was presenting it on Letterman, the way she was talking, though, and the way her mannerisms were, is she sounded unhinged in the way she was presenting this, and, like, that's kind of like she was viewed as being unhinged, I think, for a long time during her adult years. And we see what happened because of basically the mental and emotional abuse that she suffered through Hollywood. Like, I legitimately think that this was induced. Like, she was not well, but I seriously think that this was induced by Hollywood, by the people in Hollywood. They induced this level of mental unhealth and psychosis in her because of the treatments that we're seeing here with what she experienced in this movie, and probably the movies that followed that she did afterwards too. Oh yeah, and they still do. They're more diabolical in the way they do it. They're not as overt with it, because now if they're overt, they will get their asses torn apart by society. But yeah, they still do it. They're just far more subtle. They're more insidious in the ways they do it now.
Really good on her next take, though. I mean, you would be, wouldn't you? Now, would it surprise you to know that Judy Garland would suffer mental health issues for the rest of her life and eventually died of an overdose at the age of 47? Because it probably shouldn't. Even during a time when on-set safety, actors' welfare, proper working conditions and reasonable hours were seen as optional extras instead of basic necessities, The Wizard of Oz was a particularly brutal shoot, and by the time filming finally wrapped in March 1939, 6 months after it began, cast and crew were completely burned out. Literally in some cases. In addition to the burn scars from her accident on set, Margaret Hamilton's skin had been dyed green by the copper used in the witch makeup and would stay that way for months afterwards. Ray Bolger was left with
Jesus.
permanent facial scars after wearing the Scarecrow mask for months on end. Judy Garland was by now hopelessly addicted to amphetamines, diet pills, and caffeine, and would struggle with it for the rest of her life. Even the dog playing
My
Toto
God.
was sidelined with a broken foot after one of the actors stood on it. As for the Munchkins,
What?
though, they had a fucking blast on that movie, man. Although it was praised for its technical achievements at the time, The Wizard of Oz would end up having a disappointing run at the box office and wouldn't turn a profit until it was re-released in the 1940s. But the more it was shown, the more its reputation grew, and these days it's regarded as one of the most recognisable and influential films ever made. But at what
Yeah.
cost? This movie really
Oh,
was
yeah.
production hell of the highest order, and proof that they really don't make them like they used to, because in some cases, well, they absolutely shouldn't.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
Holy shit. I knew about some of these. That I did know about some of these. I didn't know about all of them. There were several of those that I didn't know, and holy shit.